Welcome to Beyond Table Talk, a space for real people and real conversations that move us from awareness to action. Each episode dives deep into the issues that impact our daily lives, financially, emotionally, and socially, with real talk from real people. We're so glad you've joined us, and we've got a powerful conversation ahead. Whether you're tuning in live or catching the replay, thank you for being a part of this community. Now let's get into it. Meet our moderator.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond Table Talk, a signature conversation powered by the Association for Black Economic Power. I'm Sharon Taylor, your host for tonight's topic on Seasons of Hope, moving families from crisis to stability. Before we get started, please take a moment to scan the QR code on your screen. Please complete the brief survey. Your feedback helps us shape future conversations like this one. So just take a moment to do that. Now let's get back to our discussion. Across the countries, families are navigating housing, instability, raising costs, and limited access to support and emotional strain that directly affects their children and plan for the future. Tonight's conversation centers on what families are facing, how systems impact stability, and what it takes to move us along. I want to welcome three of our panelist guests, but before I get started, I want to bring up the awareness of tonight our three community leaders who are going to work directly with families and how they impact family safety. I don't know what's going on with me tonight. I never have this, but here we go. I think it's this Minnesota cold weather. So here, if you're somewhere else, please send heat. This is not just about understanding the challenges, but about connecting real pathways that move families forward. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm joined by three powerful voices in our community who are working at different levels of family stability. Lynn Lewis, please introduce yourself and share more about the mission from Family Refuge Village and the families that you serve.
Sure. Sharon, thank you for bringing us in today. My name is Lynn Lewis. I'm the CEO and founder of Family Refuge Village. And the mission of Family Refuge Village is pretty simple. Our goal is to support families in the community before they spiral into crisis and need a child welfare intervention from public system. We definitely, our passion is supporting families before a crisis arises, keeping kids safe in the community, and keeping our families out of child protection whenever possible. And if a family is involved in child protection, we want to work with the system to support those families in, staying together or reuniting. So that's Family Refuge Village in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction about your program. Mr. Thomas Berry, will you please, thank you for joining us tonight. Will you please introduce yourself and tell us more about being a director at the Minneapolis NAACP?
Yes, ma'am. I am the vice president of the Minneapolis NAACP. I'm also on the child protection committee that we have at the NAACP. Currently, our focus is on doctors who are misdiagnosing families throughout the Twin Cities, which is leading to families getting child protection service cases and things of that nature. We're also focusing on making sure that the African American Family Preservation Act that was passed in 2024 is being exacted to the families in Hennepin County as well as Ramsey County. Before I was the vice president, I was also working at Village Arms with the person who I replaced today, Khalees Houston, who is an immaculate leader as well as an immaculate person with this particular cause of fighting child protection services in the attempts to making sure that Black families can stay home. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for standing in for panelist Khalees Houston, and also for the correction. You are the vice president, did you say, for the Village Arms?
For the Minneapolis NAACP.
Nice. Thank you for that. Thank you. Our last panelist, Ms. Joni Cannon from Urban League Twin Cities, the director of the Center of Advancement for Black Family. Will you please introduce yourself and tell us more about your program?
I will. Thank you so much for having me to join you guys tonight. But again, I am the director of the Center for the Advancement of Black Families. I oversee three programs there: a community care for children, which is a proactive program where we go out and we inform families of their parental rights. We inform families of neglect, what abuse looks like concerning the state statutes. We also have a program, court ordered families, that do supervised visits and parenting classes. And then the last thing is our Kinship Navigator program.
Say the last program again, the Truth to Navigating program.
Yep, Kinship Navigating program. And that's a program that we support relative caregivers. And this is for our families that are helping children to bypass the foster care system. Some of them might be in foster care, but most of these families, these children have bypassed the system, and we're supporting them while they're supporting these children.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for saying more about that too.
Mhm.
And to our viewers, your voice is a part of the conversation. Please type in your questions in the chat, and we'll get a chance to answer those during our live broadcasting. So please take a moment to do that. Let's just jump right in with conversations around families and what they're facing right now. Can I start with you, Ms. Lynn, to say, what are some of the common crisis situations that you are seeing with families as they arrive to the Family Refuge Village?
Oh, thank you. Definitely looking at issues around, resources, mental health services. I think between Joni and Thomas, I would say that's a huge one for our community. Looking at some of the barriers to accessing mental health services, as well as some of the challenges around myths within our community around accessing mental health services. So that's a huge one for us. Dealing with domestic violence. I mean, when you look at domestic violence, there's a trigger there. Not only are you just looking at the relationship between the male and the female and in the family, but you're also looking at, what's the aftermath? If mom has to leave home with the children, where does she go? What resources does she have, to support her in those situations? And then I would also say, looking at issues around fathers' rights. That's a huge one within the African American community. Sometimes and I hate to use this term, but you see baby, daddy, mama drama. And so really looking at, how do we make sure that parental rights are intact and supported, and kids have access to their parents, especially making sure that children are safe, as well. And so, I think those are the big ones for us. And always economics, they're a big one for our community. When you look at all of the issues that are brought up, at some point, there's a touch point around economics. Yeah. So that's huge. And as I mentioned in the introduction, our initial premise when we established our organization was looking at addressing those antecedents early on for family before they spiral into crisis. But what I'm finding is that families are pretty deep into crisis when they come to our door. So,
by the time they reach you, they're already deep into some crisis. Yeah. Wow. Mr. Berry, from your work with NAACP and child protection efforts, how do moments of family crisis often intersect with the system involvement, and particularly when it comes to disproportionality?
Well, I think the system is probably the root of the problem in our community. The system is the one that told us that it was okay to have, children in single parent households because they only focus on one parent and they don't stand up on the other parent. The system is the one that says at birth, the child only has one parent, the mother, and then the state is the other parent, and the father has to petition the state in order to get parental rights, and then we call that father a deadbeat dad. But really, if you think about it, if you don't have any rights, how are you a deadbeat? Who would pay for a car that they don't get to drive? And so it's the system. This is a systematic thing, and the system has impacted in a lot of ways. When you start thinking about even out of home placement with children and child protection services that we deal with often, a lot of times they won't even contact the father or the father's side of the family. The whole family sitting right there waiting to deal with the child. They may not get along with the mother. You know what? The father may not even pay child support, but he's willing to take the child in. It does not mean that the father is not able, does not mean that the father does not care. And a lot of our babies, when they are put outside of the home, the data says it. It's not us just saying it, that the children fare worse being placed with strangers instead of placement. And so, that is the system at place. And we are disproportionately represented in the system. What I'm ashamed to say today is that we passed a bill in 2024 that said that we were supposed to cut down on this inside of Ramsey County as well as Hennepin County. But what we have Black folks now who are in charge of the system in both counties who are saying that they don't know what the term active care is. Like when you don't understand how to deal with disproportionate groups, and now you have to debate the disproportionality. Before we were fighting for the bill about 5-6 years ago, they were having the nerves to debate on the floor to define what the word black mean, who was black and what was black. And so you see white folks doing that, and then you see us take it, and then we're part of the system, and then we start doing the systematic things to our own folks, and then saying, hey, let's move in moderation. We're going to take this slow. I know the bill says all, but we'll do a 30% rollout. Well, who gets to determine the 30%? It's an imaginary 30%, by the way, right? Someone says you don't have to do it, but it's our own people, and it's only because that's how the system pumps it out. Just one quick thing, it reminds me of what my dear brother Khalid Muhammad once said about the little black cat who goes to the all-white dog school to learn how to be a white dog. That is what's wrong with the system. It is it pumps out this type of oppression towards our people.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot to contend with. And then when you the two conversations that we just had right there, to put families in, and it sounds like a whole lot of court, a whole lot of red tape. Well, at the helm of it are families, people, hearts, children, and day to day, navigating those spaces. I'm gonna bring Ms. Joni into the conversation, and my question is, when these families arrive to the Urban League, how does economic instability already show up in their lives? One is the court, I'm sure, but what are some other things that are pertinent or that are happening?
Yeah. So I will echo off of what Lynn and Thomas said. Most people, when they show up at the Urban League, they're exhausted. They're anxious about the unknown. They're frustrated. Sometimes fear concerning their family dynamics with what Brother Thomas was just saying. The lack of reliable resources, food, whether it's proper clothing for the winter. A lot of these people are facing evictions, constant stress of being under the attack, which in result, health issues, and the lack of work. People having stable living wages for them to even meet their basic needs, their rent, transportation to get back and forth to work, childcare, So yeah, most times when they make it to the Urban League, people are literally exhausted and frustrated with the systems that have already designed for them to be in that place.
Wow. I mean, just a testimony to the work that you all do for the community day in, day out. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that hard, difficult work that is happening. And I'm telling you, that was amazing. Okay, I want to ask Mr. Thomas, since we are talking about the system now, we're talking about how systems and policies shape families and their outcomes. Can you say more about what are some of the most common misunderstandings about maybe why Black and Brown families become involved in child protection systems, and how do those misconceptions shape outcomes?
So often we think that the parents must be bad parents. And what we find out is they're not bad parents. They may be poor parents. They may be uneducated parents. They may not be aware of what the county or the state law may be around parenting. And if you give them the resources or the knowledge, that those parents fare pretty well. Similar things that you could find, let's say drug addiction. You could have a black parent that's a drug addict that has a dirty UA, and they will want to pull that child right away. And then you can have a white parent that has an addiction problem that has a dirty UA, and they will be willing to work with that parent. It's all about the system, and then they get to pick and choose. One of the things that we often say is that if families would just pour in with that mother or with that family or that couple and not allow them to fight the system by themselves, that they have a better chance to surviving the court. When they see the courtroom packed full of family, when they see that the church is there or the community center that they belong to is there supporting them, then those families fare better than facing the system by themselves.
Mm-hmm. Whenever we show up with support resources that we can point to say that's going to be helpful. Okay. Ms. Lynn, what does that look like in real life before a family reaches a formal policy of protections for you?
I think, to piggyback on what Thomas was saying, I think when we talk about system, we often think about public system, Hennepin County or Ramsey County, at a macro level, that's true, but also system involves community. So we have a myriad of community agencies out there for our families. And so looking at how community agencies can work together in concert to support our families outside of public system is really important. And, I was just thinking about Thomas, there have been cases that, Thomas and I have worked on together as well as Joni, but it means a lot when you have a concerted effort with organizations locked arm, wrapped around a family in support, especially at that early stage of when a family is just on the cusp of crisis. When we come together and bring our resources together and work with that family, support that family, mentor that family, that stands really tall when they're confronting a government system like child protection.
Nice. It's nice to wrap around those services and to really visually have a wraparound system. Like Thomas said, we're all here and we're present. And then to have those services present, that's amazing. Ms. Joni, how does system involvement impact long-term employability and income stability? As you mentioned earlier about the economics of it all. Tell us more about that, please.
Well, I think Lynn and Thomas said it excellent, but I look at it from a way, like Lynn said, it once a community and different programs come together to offer that family resources that can help that individual, that parent, to stay in alignment with their family goals. So let's say, for instance, if there is a family situation where there's an investigation going on and the child may have to be removed from the home. Well, what I do with the Community Caring for Children at the Urban League is I'm very proactive. So when I go out and I go to schools, I talk to families at their home, I go to churches, I always take my notary stamp with me as well as some DOPA forms. And we can help family members set up a safety plan in the event if a child has to be removed from the home. And we already have other family members or close friends to the family that would say, in the event something takes place, we already have a safe and secure place for that child to go and resources to support that family that will take that child. And with that also being said, if the community is working together to help that family have a complete wraparound and we're proactive in it, it can almost be as a shield or a safe haven for that child and that family. Well, the flip side to that, when the system is involved and it is not in support of that family, let's take the same child that has been removed from the home and they're not with a family member or a close friend of the family because there were no measurements or no steps taken or there wasn't really any pursuit to find a family member to take this child.
Mm-hmm.
Let's think about a individual that don't have reliable transportation, and they have these court dates that they have to go to. Then it may be court ordered that this person has to go through family counseling or therapy. They have to drop UAs twice a week. They may now have supervised visits 2 to 3 times a week for 2 hours at a time. Now, mind you, this person has a job. How is that possible that they'll be able to maintain their stability with all this extra additional stuff that has been added to this person, to where
Yeah.
now this whole family, their family reunification is at the mercy of this court? But the system was already set up that it would mirror this. And
Mm-hmm.
so, programs like that the three of us offer, all of us are very proactive in trying to get out to the community and share these different programs that we have, as well as the resources and the information that the parents can be aware of their parental rights. However, like I said earlier, most times that people show up, it's the after effect that something have happened, and
Yeah.
trying to jump in and meet the need and be a support to them where they are in that moment.
Would you say that prior to, because if it's the after effect, would you say it's embarrassment or family?
Oh yeah.
What keeps families from getting the help that they may need earlier on? And how do we curtail that? How do we
Yeah,
put a
absolutely.
block to that? What messages would you send?
Well, I would say that most people are dealing with shame and embarrassment because
Mhm.
what may look at risk to somebody else don't look like at risk to us.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so most people, a lot of children are being removed from the home, and it's not because they, like Thomas said, it's not like they don't have good parents. It's not like they
Mhm.
don't have a support system that want their child to be at home. A lot of times it's the lack of resources and finances.
Yeah,
There are resources out here, but people knowing where to go to get the resources sometimes is the issue.
yeah. Right. That makes sense. And so I said earlier, I'm so glad we're having this show and that we have you guys here to get this information out to the community. There are resources before we get to that stage,
Mhm.
right? And I'm so glad that you guys are making sure we convey that before it gets there. How do we get the help? Mr. Barry, it looks like you wanted to add in something there. Is there something you wanted to say?
Well, to me, I was thinking about, we talked about MLK a little bit before the show got started, and I was thinking about Martin Luther King the last time he came to Minnesota, and he was talking about the land trust grants that white folks got to establish Minnesota, and that's welfare. And it's
Mhm.
funny how we are shamed into taking government assistance while others run to government assistance.
Mhm.
And so there should be no shame in the aspect of giving to receiving government assistance or welfare. Corporations do it. White folks overwhelmingly does it, and so does our immigrant brothers and sisters as well. So we should run from that idea of shame, because we're not welfare queens. We are not deadbeat fathers. All of these stigmas that we've placed and put inside of urban culture about one another is totally wrong. Black
Mhm.
fathers are more active than any other father. I
Yeah.
know we love to talk about black fathers online, but that's
Mhm.
just anecdotal stuff. Black women are the most educated group of women of people in the country, right?
Oh, that's right.
So how can she be the most educated and the welfare queen? That doesn't make sense. And then if you go back up until 1965, black women made more money per capita than white women. So it's not like sisters are new to this. They're just true to it. So we have to be able to know the truth about who we are, and also not feel shame when we do fall down, because that welfare is set for us to be able to get back up.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mm. Yes,
Can I
indeed.
just add something to what Thomas just said? And also looking at how we define welfare as well. Like you were saying, welfare is a lot bigger than MFIP or what we historically have known as AFDC or those programs. I mean, when we talk about welfare, we're also talking about Social Security. We're also talking about Medicare, Medicaid. It's broader than getting an assistance check. It's broader than food stamps. And we put that title of welfare moms and welfare queens on Black people. But it's broader. It's not just us receiving those benefits. It's for the United States. That's why they call the whole infrastructure around welfare the welfare state. I mean, you don't have to be low income to receive welfare.
Right. And we know that the numbers don't support that we are the people getting the most benefits. Like Thomas was saying, I mean, these are government assistance programs. They are called something different in various communities, but they're very similar or the same.
Farm assistance.
Yeah,
that's
right. That's right. And our numbers don't say that we are the ones benefiting from this. Overwhelmingly, it's not us in that area. So I'm glad you brought that up. And thanks for chiming in on that. As we, I want to bring us a little bit deeper into long-term stability. As we think about that and how it actually, what does it require? I'm going to hop in with Joni to say, what does true economic stability look like for families trying to rebuild after a crisis? So say they've had some government assistance programs, and like you said, we need to help right now. Let's get to help. Then what? How do they rebuild after the crisis?
Well, and depending on what crisis we're talking about, I'll just stay in my lane and talk about the child welfare crisis. But realistically, people need the same opportunities and resources that everybody else get. They need stable and reliable housing, health care, food stability, stable employment with livable wages and benefits, and they need safety with their employment if they're, let's say employment protection in case of a crisis. I'll share just real briefly. I just got back home at the earlier part of this week from a conference down in Austin, Texas, and it was a young woman there who shared her story. And her name, you guys may have heard of her. Her name is Toya Potts, and she's down in North Carolina. And she, I think she's a part of an organization in Emancipate NC. Well, her story is that this is a college-educated Black woman who had 2 children. One night, one of her youngest child, she was preparing him to get ready to go to bed. He started having very weird behavior. He took her child to the ER to see what was wrong with her baby. The nurse that was at the ER called Child Protection. They came and they removed both of her children. Fast forward, the lady had charges placed against her. She did 8 months, I want to say, in prison. And they eventually dropped the charges because this baby was born and his diagnosis was overlooked, where the bones didn't grow properly in his body. So in his head, his skull wasn't fully developed. Well, she was exonerated. She was not given any money because she lost her home. She lost her job. She lost so much stuff in the community. The system did not give her children to anybody in her family. She said they overlooked 3 generations and didn't give those babies to nobody in her family. And so this woman is rebuilding her life one day at a time, one step at a time, but with the support of her community, which is her family. And so it's like most people, our counterparts, if they go through the same situation, they can get exonerated, but they'll get money to restart their lives again. And so I would say that the economic stability for somebody that's been through a crisis is to receive the same opportunities, resources, and benefits other people get.
Wow. That's such a sad story. And it makes me really think about all the people that have similar stories, right?
Yeah.
This has happened, and the trauma of that now lives on throughout all of those lives that were touched during this period. Even with the money to rebuild, they were missing their mom for 8 months. She's in prison. The trauma that still continues. So resources that would benefit the crisis, like we were talking about, it depends on the crisis, right? But how do we rebuild? And that's really that economic stability around some of that. So thank you for sharing that. Lynn, can I ask you what changes when families are finally reach stable housing? So they're able to get some stable housing and consistent support. What are some of the changes that you see with families, and how does that play out?
Yeah, I think one of the things we see with public systems, how they're set up, is basically looking at survival. Families, being in survival mode. If they have food, if they have basic housing, if they have the basics, well, then they're able to survive. And one of the things that I think, we all realize is that if people have safe, stable housing, consistent employment, they can move above Maslow's lower hierarchy of need and start looking at self-actualization and start looking at legacy planning for their children, start looking at, preparing their children for college. They can think beyond, what I'm going to eat for dinner today, but really look at, the next level for their family, the next level for the next generation in their family. It's really difficult to start thinking about self-actualization and moving, to that higher level of thinking when you're stuck in survival mode. And so once people move beyond survival mode, they can start dreaming, they can start visioning, they can start, planning for the future. So that's, my thought around that.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, because Maslow's says until our basic necessities are covered, so food, housing, shelter, love, those kinds of things, you can't really get up to that top pyramid, as you talked about, in order to dream about what's possible.
Can I add one more thing to that too?
Yeah.
And just think about folks that have generationally been stuck in that lower level of Maslow's hierarchy of need. That's what they pass on from generation to generation. And so, once we get folks stable, once they can see beyond that, they start dreaming, they start visioning, well, if you can have that, I can have it too.
Yeah. In my past life, I was working in education, and you talked about that stable housing. That student oftentimes goes to that same school. Has that same neighborhood. They can speak about having friends from when they were in elementary and now they're in adulthood. So that translates throughout that trickle of just a stable housing piece, having a huge impact on resources, as we talked about earlier, and seeing family and community as a resource, and education to be able to dream as an opportunity and resource. Mr. Barry, did you just sneeze too?
Yeah, look, I thought.
'Tis the season. I want to bring a question to you. In your experience, what changes when families view systems as partners? Like you touched on this before, a little bit about the partners in protection, rather than mechanisms of surveillance or as punishment. So can you speak about that?
Well, I think the Black family should reimagine the Black system more so than what we have. We pulled away from it. We need to reimagine pulling back into the churches, pulling back into the community centers, pulling back into the mosques, pulling back into the lodges. And I think that that's the system that we have been our strongest. That's the system that always, when we fall down, just think about COVID. When people couldn't even get good food, the churches were the main ones passing out foods, passing out necessities, toilet paper, paper towels, and things of that nature, right? And so we always fall back into the system. I mean, that's our system. That has always been our system, but we have forsaken that system. And we've forsaken that system. Part of it is because American culture has pushed us away for it, because that's us being away from that system drives capitalism up, right?
Mm.
Two-parent household, that means it's two people sharing one particular rent or one particular mortgage, not two people paying two separate mortgages, bragging about it, right? And then
Mhm.
where does that money go? When you put that money into the bank with that interest, you may save some. Hopefully your house is not underwater. But what happens if it is underwater, right? And if you could have had two incomes in one house, two incomes and not worried about two separate sets of utility bills, right? Two
Mhm.
different grocery bills. That's what I would hope that we will formulate. And then we will be able to see the other system as not as if not if it's Goliath, if you will, because we would know who we got behind us. When you got a whole entire family, and then on top of that family, you have your church, you have your social group, and you guys are familiar. You've been in this neighborhood for 10, 15, 20 years.
Oh yeah.
That makes you sure of who you are. That makes
Mhm.
your children sure of who they are. And it also trickles off to the neighbors throughout the community. And so that's the thing that I think that we need to bring back into the culture. We
Mm.
need to redevelop that Black family structure that we came off the plantations with. A lot of times we forgot what happened during Reconstruction. We forgot about the dedication and the struggle of sleeping in ditches together so we can build churches, so we can build schools, so we can build businesses. We did this without white folks giving us a dime.
Mm.
We did this together. And I think when we listen to the conversation today, it's either the Black man is doing, or the Black woman is doing, or the Black child is doing. It's never all three doing it together. So I
Mm.
think that we need to reimagine the Black family system, the Black community system, and to stop allowing white supremacy to interrupt that level of intimacy.
Well, I think we can call it good now. Everything's been said.
That's
I,
it there.
I love that idea of getting back to it. Is hard as a single person maintaining that household. Rent is high, mortgage is high, food is high, everything that it takes to support children, families. To your point, it is expensive. If we could have that work together, and you're paying the one mortgage rent, or you're paying for, yeah, what were you gonna say?
The one thing about that is it feeds the ego, but it kills the soul.
Mm,
Ego kills the soul because we brag about doing it by ourselves. We brag
Yes.
about all of the accomplishments, but when you're laying alone at bed at night and you got to figure out how you're going to pay that mortgage, pay that rent, pay those bills, and then keep yourself healthy and fit so that your children can have you.
Yeah.
Don't break down for the overload of all of the responsibility,
Mhm.
right? That's your soul that's dying right there. Now you hop online, you might poke it, make that post, and that's your ego. But that ego can kill the soul.
Mhm.
right. Well, you just an intro too into January's topic about being financially fit. So make sure we chime in to watch that next month, everyone, because we will dive into these New Year goals and financial fitness. But absolutely, it's not like the young people say. It's not a flex to I do all this all the time when you don't need to. If you can collaborate with family and we can build better when they said two minds, more minds together, and we can build upon that. So it's not a flex as people are. Maybe we can get away from that in the new year. So, all right, we can go on about that all day. Let me bring Lynn and Joni back in the conversation. I want to say, Lynn, housing instability, we've been talking about some instability and stability, like the changes of being stable with that. But how does instability and system involvement and economic hardship overlap in the families that you serve?
Oh, I think we all can speak to this. I mean, when you look at housing instability, when you look at, dealing with crisis, any of those pathways could open up a door to a child protection report.
Mhm.
Um, so looking at that instability, and then once a family is engaged in child welfare system, um, further instability. I mean, you already have an unstable family system, and then you're looking at potential child protection interventions and also potential child removal. I mean, how can you be stable? How can you be stable? And like Joni mentioned, if you're working, that's an add-on challenge. If you're working and you have to do a case plan, drive all over town to complete a case plan, your children are in stranger care, it adds to the amount of trauma and stress that a family may already have. Instead of initially looking at that housing instability maybe being the thorough way for the crisis in the family and addressing that issue, you keep more on the family, more pressure, more stress on the family with system involvement sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Ms. Joni, did you have something you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do. And it's pretty much echoing what Lynn and Thomas just said. I deal often, well, let's just say I know majority of everybody that have came into the Urban League that I talk to, when they're dealing with housing instability, the root cause usually is their employment. It's the average that I talk to people that's working 2 jobs, and that's to barely cover their rent, buy, purchase food, and all their other basic needs. I had a parent that came in and was living in a 1 bedroom, had 3 children, and was getting evicted because it was too many people in that, where she was living. And her income wasn't allowing her to move into a bigger place. But like Thomas was sharing, you would think if someone has a bigger spot or if they own their own home to invite them in to be with them. But it's like people are like, I can't let you come in because I may have a chance of getting evicted if I let you and your kids in my home.
Right.
So it's like the way the systems are set up. When Lynn was talking about if a child in child welfare get engaged in that parent's situation, again, like I was saying earlier, if you are court ordered to show up at court for your children, then they say, oh, well, we're going to take your kids, but we're going to give you supervised visits. And you have 2 to 3 of those visits, let's say just 1 visit a week for 2-3 hours. But it's in the daytime when you have to be at your job. Do I
one of your jobs?
One of them, yeah.
So I can make sure that I get my babies back in my care.
Yeah.
So it's not set up for, win-win situation. So it's literally going to take the community, just like Thomas said, to come back together and do what we know to do.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to ask Thomas, if all 3 organizations were fully aligned in a coordinated pathway, that's what you were talking about, right? What would true family stability actually look like?
So for one, I think families will be educated about the laws of child protection services, because I think that's very important. Even whether you're in the system or not, you need to know what could get you into the system. The second thing is the resources that it will take for you to be stable. The community would know exactly where to get those resources and also how to maintain those resources. That's one of the things that's hurting us with the current conversation that's happening with the conversation of fraud in the state, because our community is heavily reliant on a lot of those services that are being shut down. We have a lot of people who are being put out of their homes right now as we speak because of the services, and they have nothing to do with any frauding of the state. The other thing that I think would happen, and I definitely want to give praise to Village Arms and the things that they do, it's the advocacy piece on a day-to-day basis. Lynn does it as well with Family Refuge Village, and so does Joni them over at the Urban League. But it's being in there, walking into homes and walking people through the process. So we are filling in the gaps collectively of those things that the families don't know. If the community understood that more, and I would say this, the Urban League, the NAACP, Village Arms, and Family Refuge Village are not funded enough by our community. Our community don't know the type of work that is always being done. I can tell you from the NAACP aspect, we get called for everything from child protection services to help people pay their rent. And these are non-members, by the way. They're not dues paying members who by national aspect where that's all they ask us to call and respond, but we respond to everybody. because our community is in such a deficit. So I would say it's just all about streamlining that information and then making sure we're filling in those gaps. The NAACP this past summer with the Philando's Pantry that I created, we passed out over 100 tons of food, free food for our community. And being able to get that food and look on the faces of some of the men and women who are able to get the food, get the water, get the necessities, and how happy they were that need was met and they didn't have to worry about that. So I think that's what that looks like. It's just all of us working together, but the other people who do got the resources actually pouring the resources back into those institutions or those organizations who are doing that work, because we can't do it without the resources.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great segue into the question I want to ask Lynn about what should a family do first if they are facing immediate housing or safety concerns right now? Like we've talked a lot about resources and that, but where do I start? What if I'm facing an issue right now and I come to you and I say, what would you say?
Well, I would say one thing that's available to all families in our community is looking at what's available at the county level. You know, in Hennepin County, they have a front door, what they call a virtual front door, and a website, and it lists all kinds of resources that most folks don't even know about, even looking at funeral support. I mean, it's a small amount of money, but there's several resources that people can access from their counties. So actually going to their county websites and looking at, what's available to them. I would also say, just connecting with community agencies. There's Joni's organization, Urban League, NAACP, Phyllis Wheatley. I mean, every corner just about in Minneapolis, you got a church. And so we can utilize those resources that currently exist. You don't have to suffer in isolation. You don't have to deal with these issues alone. There's a community out there. There's a county resource. We pay taxes. That's what we pay taxes for, to make those services available to our community. And oftentimes, I have to say, these services sometimes are underutilized because people don't know that they're out there or that they can use them. So knowing what's available in your community is huge.
Yeah, thank you for saying that again. Again, right there, you're talking about Penn and Plymouth area where there's abundance of resources for families. Whatever you need, ask, go see. Because if it's not at this corner, it's definitely at that corner, and it's probably at the other one as well. So working in tandem together. I want to remind our viewers that you are a part of this conversation. And one of the questions that went up was, what do you believe families need most right now, and to move from crisis to stability? So here's your opportunity to tell us if we're missing something and you feel like somebody needed, you heard somebody needed or thought about it, let us know. And to Lynn's point, we may have it already in that space and you just not know. So this is another reason why we're doing this show tonight. So viewers, please drop that in. We have about 12 minutes left, and I want to make sure I get an opportunity to close us out with some action steps and what to do next. But before we go, I want to say, how can families and communities support stronger family preservation efforts at the policy and advocacy level? Because we talked about it being some system stuff. How do people who, if we are at Maslow and we're doing okay, how do we come in as supporters? Where can other folks be a part of this? Thomas, let me start with you.
Well, your vote matters. Your vote matters. And when you send Black politicians to places, don't let them come back with excuses. Have them come back with results. It's called bringing home the bacon. And you have to mobilize, strategize, and weaponize your vote. And also, you got to mobilize, strategize, and weaponize your love as well. Because if you vote as a house or as a collective, then you have a larger voter block. So I think that's one of the things. We have the Minnesota Welfare, African American Minnesota Welfare Disproportionality Act. think I'm saying it somewhere like it's been a while since I've said it all. But it's important that African Americans are aware of that bill. And the reason why that's important is because you have to understand what your rights are when they're talking about maintaining families or breaking families apart. If you are a loved one and you have a child or a grandchild that may be having their children removed, you have rights. And you need to, stand on your rights. And you also need to make sure that other people are giving you rights. So I would just say tap into the Urban League, the NAACP, Village Arms, and Family Refuge Village.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the organizations who are doing it. You don't have to start at the back of the line learning. We've already learned it. Myself and Lynn, man, we didn't have time to tell you about some of the families that we stepped in and what we've done for those families. But it is real miracle work that's being done. I can say this for me and Lynn doing this with a family. They were going to take this child, and they were this close to taking the child. And if it didn't take community like us, as well as Sister Tavia coming together and taking those steps to stand and fight with that family, that 5-year-old would have been lost.
Wow.
And so it takes community stepping in, but it also takes community understanding that we are here. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Come and talk to us, and we can all tie those threads together, because it's better to collaborate than compete against each other.
Yeah. That's important, because you don't know what you don't know. And come there where you guys are the experts, and and can help walk them through that. I'd imagine, and during that time of crisis or that toughness, that it's helpful to have someone has seen it before or seen cases before, and they can block some of those things before it starts to happen in that aspect. What would you add to that, Ms. Stoney or Ms. Lynn? What would you say about the services that, like the Urban League and the Village Arms, your organizations can help families stabilize? And what would you say for that?
Now, when you say who, we say, you're saying like, do we have any current services at our respective places to support people?
Oh, I'm sure you do. And I want to make our viewers know what those are before we go.
Okay. Yeah, but I think Brother Thomas said a mouthful.
He said a mouthful.
He said a mouthful, and I can tell you that the question that you asked earlier about the 3 different organizations being in alignment, and it's true. It's so much resources out there. If there's a family that come to me and I know I don't have the goods, but one of them have the goods, I will call their cell phone or email them, hey, can you support this family, help this family? And it's a soft handoff. It's not just you throwing people back out there because they're already exhausted and anxious they don't know, what's on the other side of it. But it's a lot of different organizations in the Twin Cities that really have a heart for the people, and they're doing the work. But it's just, he said a mouthful when he said, get out and vote. Like, people don't believe it, but your vote makes a world of a difference.
Yeah.
And
so often people think presidential vote, but we're talking about local voting, right?
It starts in your community. Yes.
So that's the council members, that's the senators, those are the legislators that we want to make sure that we're voting for on those states. Come out, and for people with work, there is a possibility. Most times jobs will let you off for that to vote. That is your right as a citizen.
Yes.
And those votes are more impactful, is what you're saying too. What's happening right here, right now. Those play out differently. So get out and then vote. He did say a mouthful.
Even those in these judges' seats.
Judges.
Yes, it makes a world of a difference.
Yes. Yeah. We talk about system changes. Absolutely. Miss Lynn, did we leave anything out that you want to add?
No, you guys hit it, but I just wanted to add this. I think also realizing that I am my brother's keeper. It's not just, because you live in one geographic area and I live in another, that is out of sight, out of mind. We're all, as a collective, what happens to one, it impacts the other. And so I think us as African Americans coming together in our communities and expanding our definition of community outside of locality, but looking at how these issues impact us as a people is really important. And as Thomas said, and leveraging our vote, understanding what these issues are, understanding the impact of systems on our children, our families, our next generation, I think is really important for us to come together and be united and not be fragmented.
Right, absolutely. I was going to ask the question that says, before we go, can you share one clear actionable step? So we talked about voting as that impacts a lot right there. Is there something that we missed? Is there something that you would also tell our viewers about what's an actionable step towards families that they can take like this week? Is it something they can do this week that you're and if there is seeking stability or resources or some kind of other support, what would each of you say? Can I start back with you, Lynn?
I would say knowledge is power. For a family, for an individual, for even for us as systems partners, knowledge is power. So understanding, the resources in our community, understanding as systems providers what others are doing in services, and then understanding policy. So educating ourselves around issues that impact our community, I would say, is one thing that we can do.
That is definitely instrumental. I'm going to go around the circle here. Mr. Berry.
Assess. Family needs to assess. They need to assess where they're at, what they need, where they want to go, and make sure that they deal with the problems when it's at a $10 state before it becomes a $10,000 problem and it becomes too much. Also, make sure while you're assessing that you are checking on the more stronger person in your family. Why? Because that person might share most of the burden and they might also carry most of the stress. And if that person is gone, what would that do to your family? I say family should take the LeBron James approach. What do I mean by that? LeBron has a bunch of friends and they all work for him, but they all work for themselves at the same time. They just understood that he was the main talent and that they can use him and he could use their skill set to get him further. They protect him and he protect them at the same time. That's what families should do. And never believe the Black family should not work together. You go to Walmart, you go to Target, and you go to so many other businesses that were started by white families. So family and business does go together, Black folks.
That's true. And they keep it going for generations on that family. I like that image of insulating, like that person and insulating each other, supporting each other. Miss Joni.
I would say pick up the phone, call me, come to the Urban League, come sit down and talk to me. And it doesn't have to be because you have children. It could be your nieces or nephews. It could be your grandchildren. It could be your best friend's kids. There is so much vital information in regards to child welfare where you can help be a major support and to others and you may not even be the one who have the child, but there is so many different avenues and so much information that we can offer to families and be proactive. Again, like the story that I shared with a young woman from North Carolina, educated mother, had her own home, good job, vehicle, and she was impacted by child welfare. So I would say pick up a phone and give us a call or stop by our locations and sit down and just have a conversation.
Yeah, maybe amazed, like Lynn said, knowledge is power, and it can strengthen you and support you. I want to say thank you so much for being panelists on it. I hope that people are enriched with this knowledge and can move forward to more stability and questions that they may have. Tonight's conversation reminds us that stability is built through safety, fair systems, and economic opportunity working together. Families deserve support that extends beyond a moment of crisis and into long-term restoration and possibility. Thank you again to our fabulous panelists, Lynn Lewis, Thomas Berry, and Joni Cannon, for your work that you do daily to support families across our communities. And to our viewers, we love to hear more from you. Please tell us what you thought about tonight's episode. Your feedback matters. And if you still have some questions, please make sure you reach out. At the end of this broadcast, you'll see their contact information. Please reach out if you have questions. Thank you to our tech team and the fabulous ABEP for the work that they are doing in communities. And everyone, thank you for joining us for Beyond Table Talk. And with that, good night.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Beyond Table Talk. We truly appreciate you, our viewers, and we want to give a special thanks to our moderators and panelists for sharing their wisdom tonight. You can check out their bios to learn more and their contact information. We also want to thank our sponsors who make these conversations possible. And we encourage you to stay connected. Follow us on social media, engage with the conversation, and share with your community. If you'd like to sponsor an episode or get involved, we'd love to have you to be a part of this journey. Scan the QR code. We take this moment to thank our incredible team that brings this program to life. Before you head out, please take a moment to fill out the post-checkout form. Your feedback really matters. Let's keep the momentum going, and remember, the most meaningful conversations don't just happen at the table, they live beyond it. See you next time.